Of auditing, we talk about completing the audit. So we've gone through the whole cycle, and now we're at the very end after all the tests are performed and all the results are in. So this final review involves a variety of different things. So first we'll talk about looking for contingent liabilities. So contingent liabilities are a potential future obligation that is maybe unknown at the financial statement date, at December 31st, but now we're a couple months later, and maybe things are going to be brought to light. So like, let's say, for instance, there's a lawsuit and the company was involved in that lawsuit at the end of the year. Well, then something happened in those first couple months where now they realize, hey, we are going to owe. So management is responsible for identifying and accounting those, but they do need to be disclosed in the notes to the financial statements. And a lot of times the auditors will do an inquiry of the attorneys at the end of the year so that they can also just kind of double check and make sure anything is out there. Or like when I worked at the oil and gas company, like we would have wells that we knew were dry hole. So those, in a sense, were contingent liabilities. Like we had to do something with those wells. So the auditors would check on those too to verify that we were properly accounting or creating a liability for all those wells that needed to be plugged. So again, those are the procedures. They're going to talk to the management. They're going to make an inquiry of that legal counsel. They'll also review the board of directors minutes, because chances are some of these major things would have been discussed with the board of directors, and if they go through the minutes, they could see those. And they will review all the minutes up until the date that they sign that audit or the report. So then they're going to review for subsequent events. So that, again, that's the same thing to say things that happened after the balance sheet date. So let's say it's December 31st until they sign that report, whether it's unmodified or whatever. They're going to look for any material events that could have happened in that period of time, because most of the time they're actually still on site. So I mean, they're right there. So they're going to look for some again, more material events. So like, say there's a bankruptcy of a major customer, maybe something happened, especially say it's like a computer or cell phone type company where you could have an obsolescence of a ton of your inventory if things change. And again, like I already talked about, if there was a settlement of a lawsuit, there could be things that maybe don't have a direct impact on the financial statements, but still need to be reviewed or looked at. So if there was like a merger or an acquisition that happened right after the balance sheet date, if there was some sort of catastrophe like a natural disaster or like a tornado or hurricane, things like that happened again right after the financial statement date. And then we've got again, those specific tests. So we have our regular cutoff testing that happens again right after the start of January, say again, if our financial statement date is December 31st, just to make sure that we've properly placed all the things in all of our sales and our and things like that in the proper period, and our purchases in the proper period. And then we also look at those sales returns and allowances that come in that first part of that next period, just to make sure there wasn't like channel stuffing where they sell out product and then allow their customers to return it in the next period. So those are kind of our regular cutoff testing. Now, to deal with these review of subsequent tests, again, we go back to inquiring of management. We go to those lawyer, the attorney inquiries, and then the board of directors minutes, because anything major really should be discussed there. So the audit report may contain 2 dates for the end of their field work, and then if there was a subsequent event. Then we have our final evidence accumulation, and that happens when like a partner or again a higher level person is going to perform some final analytical procedures. And we want it to be someone who's kind of above and beyond the audit, partly because the audit is you could have first year staff auditors who are working, never worked with this client before. Their work has to be double checked. Now, granted, there would be higher level auditors and then there'd be managers on site also. But sometimes that partner has that bigger picture, and he's going to come through, he or she's going to come through and perform those final analytical procedures to just make sure everything is looking like they expect it to. They're always considering the going concern that the client will still be in business for the next year. So 1 year from that balance sheet date. So again, if they felt that there was a going concern issue, that would need to be disclosed. As long as the company seems to be profitable and healthy, then that's all good. Then we've got, they obtain that management letter of representation. So the auditor normally prepares that letter, but they'll prepare it on the client's letterhead, and then the client is the one who actually signs it. So in that letter of representation, there's the following issues are discussed, and the reason the auditors prepare this letter is for these three purposes: that it states in there that management is responsible for the assertions in the financial statements. It's there to remind management of potential misstatements and document the management's responses to any of the inquiries. So the issues that could be discussed, again, depending on the circumstances of the audit, could be fraud, laws and regulations, if there was any uncorrected misstatements, if there's litigation and claims, their use of estimates, related party transactions, any subsequent events. So not all of these are going to be relevant to every audit, but these would be items that would be included in that letter if they were a part of the particular audit that the auditors are involved in. Then we evaluate the results. So there should be sufficient appropriate evidence that supports the auditor's opinion. So again, the report's gonna say maybe have an unmodified opinion, which is a clean report. So if we're giving them a clean report, our evidence that we've gathered throughout the audit should support that opinion. So it should be appropriate, and it should be supportive of what statement we're giving them. If there was a material misstatement, then the auditors are going to want those statements to be revised to their satisfaction before they're going to give any type of an unmodified report or a clean report. If they are not revised, then that qualified or adverse opinion must be issued. The financial statement disclosure should be evaluated. So again, if you look at a 10K from a publicly traded company, those can be over 100 pages. So everything that's in those 10Ks are reviewed by the auditor to verify that those are accurate and that there's nothing misleading and there's nothing missing in those. The audit documentation review, again, like I said, it's normally a partner or a high-level person involved in the audit, and they're going to evaluate the performance of the inexperienced personnel, because again, like I said, a lot of times your staff auditors have maybe this is their first year, could be their second year, but they don't have a lot of experience to draw from. Make sure that it meets the audit firm's standard of performance, and then counteract any bias of the auditor. So like say you're the manager of that auditor, and this has been your client for the past 3 or 4 years, you feel very comfortable with them, you feel comfortable with the work, you want to have kind of that, not like it's even independent, but you want to have that review of somebody over you, just to make sure that there is no bias involved in the audit itself. So then they'll issue the audit report, and again, all clients are hoping for that unmodified or clean report to come back. They will then communicate with the audit committee. So our auditing standards require that the auditor disclose any illegal acts that they uncovered to the audit committee, even if they're not material. They also have to disclose any internal control deficiencies that they found. And then again, just reiterate that their role is to just provide reasonable assurance. So it's not a guarantee. They didn't review everything. There still could be, other areas of issues that were not uncovered. So they are just providing reasonable assurance overview of the scope of what the audit entailed, report any significant findings, and then ask for any relevant information needed for, again, the final stages of this report. That management letter we already talked about. Again, the auditor prepares and the client then signs. Oh, sorry. And then one other thing that was on there, though, that I didn't, I guess, have on that first slide is that the auditor will provide management with a written suggestion of any improvements that they would recommend. So after they've gone through and audited their internal control structure and, did a final test of detail of transactions as well as detail of balances, they may have some suggestions to help the company operate more efficiently or the accounting department to work, more smoothly. Okay, then subsequent discovery of facts. So after the client issues their financial statements publicly, so the financial statements, the 10K is released. If it relates to that period under audit and is materially misleading, then the client is going to have to revise those statements, and then republish them. And then if they refuse, the Securities and Exchange Commission would need to be notified again, because in order to be publicly traded and to have your stock on the open market, the Security Exchange Commission is counting on those financial statements to be accurate and to be audited. So if there was anything that came back later on, they're going to have to correct it. Okay, so that is our final step of the audit process.